I'm Teresa Sobieschek. I'm a professor in sociology. I also formerly was the director of international development studies, and now I am come down here so I can actually see you. No, we don't bite. There's only 4 of us or 5 of us. I don't bite, but in any case, it's good to see you. Here's a little list of what's coming up. I'm the academic advising coordinator. I also sit on a bunch of different things like the gerontology minor, South and Southeast Asia Studies minor, women's and gender studies, and as well as Peace Corps prep and global public health. Is that all? Like about 5 or 6? So I'm very interdisciplinary. And just a few words about me, and then we'll find out more about you guys. I do have the interesting last name, and you will see me, by the way, week to week, because I'm going to come every week to introduce the speaker and help them with the technology and so forth. Take attendance, that's my job. So, Sobieschek, all those Z's, it's a good Polish name, Sobieschek. Right, it does. And then if you wrote it like it sounded, but not like with all those Z's, it's Sobieschek. And I also go by my shortened version, which is Sobi or Dr. Sobi, and my first name is Teresa, so you can call me any of those things, or all of those things if you want. I come to the field of international development studies by way of the Peace Corps. So, and actually, this campus is one of the few campuses in the country, and actually the first public university in the United States that has a Peace Corps prep certificate. And so we offer certificates, I believe it's in 7 different fields that help give you bonus points in applying for the Peace Corps and being considered. So it doesn't guarantee that you get in, but it can give you the bonus points, kind of like when military workers finish working in the military and they want to get a federal government job, they get bonus points, and so obviously they almost always get the job. So this is the same deal, it'll bump you up to the top of the list. So I was a Peace Corps volunteer in rural Thailand, teaching English as a foreign language, crossing over into agriculture, actually 30 years ago, I can't believe it, right out of college. Of course I was doing some agriculture projects here, they're training us in doing rice planting, and then I was located at the only rural junior high school in my county, and while I was there, they were just opening up the first couple years of the senior high school, so I was there to help do some teaching for the senior high school. Actually, at that point, we didn't have enough teachers, so sometimes those kids in the senior high school classes were just wandering around campus doing nothing, there was nobody to teach. I also did map projects and projects about different countries because the kids just were really unexposed to the wider world. I was, I believe, the first foreigner of any sort to live in my county. So now there's a lot. They actually now have 4 English teachers, kind of volunteer teachers, some from the Philippines, one from the US, I think one from Japan, teaching English in my high school where I used to be, so it's kind of fun. I also came in an academic way with development on my mind, and so my master's degree, one of my master's degrees is in international politics with a focus on development. I ended up in development sociology for my PhD with a focus on gender and Southeast Asia studies. And just again, sorry if you've had my class, you already know about this stuff, but I do research mainly in Southeast Asia. So some of my work is to do with labor migration and recruitment. So these both are Thai ladies working in Japan, and both of them have been trafficked into Japan. So some of my research deals with human trafficking, which is a type of debt bondage or unofficial labor recruitment. More recently, I've been looking at access to healthcare in remote rural areas of Thailand, and this is actually in one of my research villages in Khon Kaen. No doctor, and probably at least an hour from the nearest doctor. Terrible, terrible roads, so the elderly, pregnant women, children had a real trouble getting out to get to see the doctor. So we actually brought the doctors and nurses and public health workers to them in a kind of a health fair. And so here's one of the ladies of the town, meeting with the doctor from the big city to get some advice and get diagnosed. Social mobility of Thai women married to Japanese men. So the time when I was in Japan, I was actually there to study Thai women who have maybe initially had come and been trafficked or had come illegally, but then had legalized their status by marrying a Japanese man. And so I'm looking at whether or not their social status really improved, or is it kind of, maybe actually it kind of went down because some of them married Japanese men who are on welfare. And so, having kind of a difficult life. But an interesting thought nonetheless. This looks like a Thai temple, but it's actually in Chiba Prefecture, which is near Tokyo, Japan. Most recently, I was a Fulbright scholar in Vietnam. So for about 10 months, I was in a university, the Mekong Institute for Rural Development in Can-Tho City, which is the largest city south of Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City. And so kind of interesting, a lot of social change and development going on in Vietnam. Here's some of the drastic new buildings, but of course then you still see people, even on bicycle, carrying their ducks, but here's a guy on his motorbike with about 40 ducks. Lots of agriculture, but the agriculture is also shifting as agriculture is devalued, but also, especially where I was, as the land is salinized, and so it gets salty because of the seawater flowing in through canals and stuff, so they can no longer use it for rice planting or other, a lot of agriculture crops won't grow, so they have to actually turn to maybe even producing shrimp or just leave agriculture altogether. Shrimp, by the way, they like to have salty water, that's how they live, so that's okay for them. So fun times in Vietnam, and I'm not going to talk so much about Vietnam tonight, but I will talk about Southeast Asia. At first, Delilah, who's the program coordinator for International Development Studies, who's arranging all the speakers, wanted me just to introduce the course, but I'm like, no, I could just come and this will be my lecture. So I actually thought I'd give you a little lecture tonight on a really wonderful role model for me in terms of her grassroots development efforts. And she lives in Cambodia, which is part of Southeast Asia. And so I wanted to give a little bit of background on Cambodia in general, and then get to her particular case and what she did. I find her life story really moving, and I think part of the power of the message I'd like to communicate tonight is that she's just an ordinary person. She's just a school teacher, an ordinary person, and then look what she's doing. So, through one person, you can make a big change. So, well, we know that you have been to Asia. Has anyone else been to Asia? Yeah, no, okay. Have you ever been to Cambodia? No, yeah, okay. So everyone should go to Cambodia. It's a once-in-a-lifetime trip to go to Siem Reap and Angkor Wat. Just amazing, amazing. So here we have Southeast Asia. China's up that way. India's over this way. And so here's Thailand, which you may have heard of. You may have heard of Vietnam. Cambodia is this country right here between Thailand and Vietnam, a small country. Since the Vietnam War, we haven't really heard too much about Cambodia, and so I want to just say a little bit about it tonight. This is actually a map of the whole of Cambodia. There's the Tonle Sap Lake. It's the largest freshwater lake in that part of the region, and it's also the most important protein source for Cambodia because they get fish from it. So a lot of their protein is not coming from other animals or eggs or something like that. It's coming from fish. So really, really, really important source of food. Here's the capital city, Phnom Penh. But where I'm going to be talking about is actually up there with the pink arrow, Siem Reap, which is it's the city that's right next to Angkor, which is the ancient capital of Cambodia under the Khmer, the ancient Khmer, many dynasties, many kingdoms. And so just to kind of orient yourself, it's pretty close to Thailand. Laos is up there. It's a little bit far away from Vietnam, but was still experiencing some of the impacts of the Vietnam War. So Cambodia may be known for a few different things. It's got some beautiful kind of deserted beaches. These are a lot of my own photographs. Certainly though, Angkor Wat, Angkor Temple, but the whole temple complex, which is probably close to 50 different temples or more, is just amazing. This is one of the temples, one of the 50. This is Angkor Wat. It was the capital of the Khmer Empire back in the 900s, 800s, 900s, and actually remained the capital through the 14 to 1500s under the different dynasties. This is a particular temple still influenced by Hinduism, so it's dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu. It's just amazing, the detail, but also the power of the Khmer Empire at the time, controlling a huge region, had understood that they need to have lakes for water sources. One of the early leaders set up hospitals, and we found stone records of the supplies he gave to each hospital in his region. So just really an amazing empire, really a world power in the time. And so you've probably maybe seen pictures of that, or maybe pictures like this. If you saw Tomb Raider, you might have seen this with Lara Croft, and so some of these big heads or these statues come alive in the Tomb Raiders. These are actually in a different temple in the complex. This is actually a Buddhist temple, so Bayon Temple. So some were Hindu, some were more Buddhist. So really just amazing the architecture and the detail and really the strength of the empire to actually have built all of these huge, huge temples and all of the dams and reservoirs that supported the huge kingdom. You know, just stunning. You know, some of the relief work, again, is just famous, and, you know, to look at the wealth of the community back in the day during the Angkor kingdoms, and then to look at Cambodia today, which I'll show you in just a second, is a big shock. Again, just the relief work is absolutely amazing. So do you see what I mean? This is a trip in your life, in a lifetime. You have to go there and spend like a week just looking at all these different temples. It's so beautiful. You know, I mean, this one's fascinating with the tree growing through it, and you know, they can't really take down the tree because at this point because they bring down the temple if they took down the tree. You know, look at these little statues. So really in quite good shape. If you get up close, you can see some bullet holes from the communist Khmer Rouge that was in power from 1975 to 1979-80. But actually still there was Khmer Rouge fighting in this area up until the early 1990s, so a couple decades beyond when the Khmer Rouge were displaced. So you can still see the bullet holes in some of these ruins. It's just, you know, kind of shocking. Just, you know, what can I say? Just a gorgeous place. So really famous for that reason. So a little bit on the Khmer Rouge. So think about the Vietnam War, where we're mainly bombing in Vietnam, but actually we bombed a lot in Laos, just to the north of Cambodia. Laos, I know the statistics, received more bombs dropped on this tiny little country than was dropped in all of Europe during World War II, right? Cambodia, just below it, a similarly sized country, also being bombed and, you know, napalmed and stuff. So in my view, the Vietnam War, the US-sponsored Vietnam War and all these bombing runs helped to destabilize the government, and so that helped to bring in power the Khmer Rouge, which are the communists, reacting both against the US fighting in Vietnam, but reacting against what they view as some of the corruption of elites in cities. And so here they're coming into Phnom Penh or some of the cities, taking power, but they're eventually going to get rid of all of the population of those cities, move them out to rural areas, because they're kind of embracing what we might call an agricultural or agrarian ideal, where the farmer is best, and so they want everyone to be farmers, they don't want the elites.
Was it Khmer Rouge where there were more bombs dropped there than all of Europe in World War II?
I haven't seen the statistic for Cambodia. I remember Laos, though, the country right above it, yeah. Which is just shocking. In Laos, you can still see those bombs They're using them for like the legs of buildings, or like especially their granaries, because mice and rats can't climb up the slippery metal to get there. But they're using the metal for bridges and like for fence posts. Unfortunately, you know, the number of landmines and bombs, you know, hurting people, both in Laos, also in Cambodia, is just stunning. So you'll see, you know, limbless people. And I noticed in Laos, a poster was done with pictures because a lot of people couldn't read, and little kids couldn't read, about not picking up the bombings. They want the bombings because they have metal and they can sell the metal, but they thought they were toys, so they were picking them up and then, you know, blowing them up. So just a really horrifying situation. But imagine the Khmer Rouge coming in. Which of you wear glasses or contacts? Raise your hand and keep it raised. Which of you has a wristwatch or a clock or a computer that tells time? Oh, you have a wristwatch. Raise your hand. How about you? Wristwatch? Yeah, okay. So actually in this room, I'm wearing a wristwatch too, and glasses. It's a double thing. We would all be targeted to be killed because we're the elites, right? We're educated, we're elites, we're in college. You know, so they're gonna kill the teachers as well as anybody wearing glasses. They didn't have cell phones at the time, but wristwatches was a sign of being elite. Also, if you could speak French or a foreign language, remember Cambodia used to be part of the French colony, so people who could speak French were considered to be elite, so would be targeted to either be killed or definitely to be moved out of cities. So the cities basically become empty, you know, because the people are moved out to rural areas. Now imagine this, you know, have you ever farmed and planted rice or whatever? Do you know how to do that? Imagine, you know, a teacher or, you know, a butcher or whatever from the urban area having to go out and learn how to plant rice. So really a difficult thing. Another problem was that they're not just moving the city people out to rural areas, but they're also moving rural people around. And so the whole country begins to go into famine because, you know, you're moved to a new place that might have different conditions, so you don't know how to plant there. You may plant here and then be sent somewhere else to harvest, and so you're not following the crop through. And so a huge, huge amount of damage, you know, besides all the violence going on. So statistics vary, but something between 1.7 to 2.5 million people killed in between 4 and 5 years. And this is shocking because it's about 1/6 of the population. And again, it's all the elites, so it's all the educated people. They lost all of the people who knew the Cambodian court dance style, except for one who was in her 80s. So I was there in Ithaca, and they had brought her to America with some young Khmer to try to get her to teach them before she died so that they wouldn't lose that whole, you know, style of dancing. So, you know, really, you know, imagine losing not only that huge number of people, but also all of the, you know, the educated people, all the artists, etc. So I just kind of down memory lane. This looks a lot like my high school when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. You know, actually this is maybe a little bit fancier because some of our buildings were only 2-story. This is a school in Phnom Penh that was turned into a prison, and it's shocking because it looks so much like my Peace Corps school in Thailand. So you go in there and it looks like you're going into the schoolrooms, but in the schoolrooms, some of them you'll see a bed, just a few little belongings. There's their pillow, their bowl, and then this thing which may have been used to help chain them to the bed, you know, against their feet or against their neck. So not much. Some of them rooms were rebuilt to have little tiny cells, you know, teeny cells where people were. So it's kind of a prison, but it's also a place where they're going to torture people. So they believe that at least 14,000 people entered this center, and of the 14,000 people that entered, 7 survived. 7 survived. So a huge, huge, you know, terrible thing. You have maybe heard of or seen this movie, The Killing Fields, which won a bunch of Academy Awards. It's from 1984, so maybe it predates you, but worth going to look at. It's actually a true story of Dith Pran, and here's this, I forget what his name was, but he's a New York Times writer, and he was helping the writer. The writer had a chance to get him out, but he he sent the Dithpran's family out, but he kept Dithpran there to work with him. And then the Americans were all evacuated, Dithpran was left, and then he got caught by the Khmer Rouge and suffered atrocities and finally escaped to Thailand. Some of the atrocities he suffered from the film, again, probably in the story. So it looks like tree roots, but it's also, some of this is, he's stumbling through the mud, but it's actually a killing field where it's just a mass grave that he's stumbling through. So one could imagine these mass graves because, about a sixth of the population were killed in just about 4 or 5 years. So you can see in Phnom Penh some museums to this. Besides Tuol Seng, you can see a memorial, and so the memorial is actually made of different bones of the people that they've dug up. I'm sure it's not all the bones, but they've dug up a lot of them. Please don't walk through the mass grave. Just lots and lots and lots and lots. So we seem to not learn our lessons. The genocide of the Nazi Germany, the genocide here. We have more recent genocide in Rwanda. Is there one going on now in Syria? We don't know, but we seem not to learn very much of our lesson. Of course, it's causing huge displacements as the Khmer Rouge move the population of Cambodia from place to place, but also a lot of the people in Cambodia fleeing the country as refugees into Thailand. And so this is actually in Thailand, but you can see they're trying to distribute rice to refugees. So a huge, huge refugee crisis that spilled over into Thailand. And actually the US took some Cambodian refugees as well. So Siem Reap, when I showed it to you on the map, sometimes it's spelled EA. I'm just going to spell it E, because depending on the map, it's spelled a different way. So what is contemporary Siem Reap like? Let me show you. It's actually still kind of a poor place in the city. So while the roads a lot of them are paved, and some of the people are elite and can have big houses or apartment buildings, a lot of people are still on bicycles, the wandering room sellers, so again, people who may have been affected by napalm and some of the birth defects of napalm, so this is a beggar, lots of street people and begging going on, homelessness, of course. I thought this was funny. So this is in a market, and I'm like, what are all these clothes? They look kind of like American clothes. They call these tsunami clothes because they were donated not to the Japanese tsunami, it's dating back to the Thai tsunami. So back in the early 2000s, right? And then they couldn't sell them all, they couldn't use them all, so they sold them off to Cambodia, and now Cambodian merchants are selling them in the market. So they are actually probably clothes from Europe or the US, but they're the tsunami clothes for sale in Cambodia now. So a lot of people making their living however they can, but it struck me, beautiful pots, but also how thin the poor cows are, not doing so well. Like anywhere in Asia, you'll see everybody on one motorcycle. So the motorcycle or the bicycle is the family mode of transportation. So 5 people on one motorcycle, which is kind of depressing because they're not all wearing helmets. I guess the good thing is that maybe they'd all die together, if they fell off. We wouldn't just have one. Maybe the dad will survive, I don't know. So bikes too, this bike has 4 on it, and it looks like if they took stuff out of their basket, they could put one more in the basket, so they could have had 5. In the rural area around Siem Reap, which is, Angkor is actually in the rural area, and so what I'm going to be talking about is some schools in the rural area. It's really a difficult life. You can see from these kids, what do you notice about these pictures? Anything strike you about those pictures?
Don't have a lot of clothes.
Yeah, not a lot of clothes, and both it's because it's hot, but also because they don't have clothes, right? They don't have clothes. They don't have shirts. This kid doesn't have clothes, so think about that. The poverty level in Cambodia was 53% in 2004, so that's well after the Khmer Rouge. Going down, World Bank statistics said by 2011 it's 20.5. That's still, though, a significant portion of the poor, and I suppose that more of the poor will live in rural areas, so we will see quite a bit of poverty in the rural areas that I'm going to show you. They look so cute and happy though. They're happy to, if you had a camera that would, you could take the picture and then show it to them, and they had never seen that, so they were really excited. So I put this here because Thailand, 30 years ago, we used to still sometimes see water buffaloes being used to plow, but nowadays you don't see those. So that's, it's back a couple generations delayed, they're still using water buffalo. So this would be a great asset if you had it, because you could use it to plow with, but then eventually you could eat it. It's really tough and chewy, not delicious. So some of the houses, this is a nicer house because it's made out of wood, but most of the houses in the school that I'm going to show you are like this. They're made out of bamboo or leaf mats. So it's really fragile, and you have to renew it every 3 or 4 years because it just literally just collapses. So not a good, you can imagine a house made out of that is not super safe. If you catch on fire, so you can't actually cook in there. Imagine the bugs. It's not, it might protect you a little bit from the rain, but it's not super good like if it ever gets cold or something like that. So kind of a difficult lifestyle. But yet they're still trying because they're making fences, and they've got this fence being used as a clothesline. Part of the issue in the area is that it dates back to the Khmer Rouge, which is why I started this. So imagine you're living through the Khmer Rouge, and the Khmer Rouge at gunpoint are moving you, forcing you to move from place to place. You would move with your family, sometimes they're even dividing families, but in that, if you had a land title, it is lost, right? Or even if you managed to take it with you, I'm sure during this great famine and everything, and you're moving from place to place, it would be just worn out and it would disappear. So then you come back to what had always been your land. Unless there are enough neighbors who also could make it back to, to testify that this was your land, you just lost your land. And so there's a land grab that happened where urban people grabbed that land and got title to the land that maybe it wasn't ever theirs, it was maybe really wasn't this guy or his ancestors, but they lost the title because of that Khmer Rouge displacement. And so now he's working on the land, but now instead of getting all the profit, he has to split the produce that he produces or any profits he makes half and half with the landowner. So it's suddenly just really cut into it. Again, I don't like those bamboo floors because it's so easy to cut your foot on the edge of the bamboo, and so it's dangerous. But I just wanted to see, all these kids are not hers, some of the neighbor kids came too, but she does have 6 kids, this woman that's sitting right beside me with her short hair. So, big families, kids viewed as workers, both to care for younger siblings, but also to send out as earners or maybe to work in agriculture. A lot of the people are Buddhist. Many of them are also animist, where they believe in spirit houses, or this is a spirit house. So you'd have a spirit house outside your regular house, and then put offerings. You can see it looks like a piece of fruit and some incense there. Maybe there's a bottle of pop or something in the back, to try to convince the spirits to occupy the spirit house and not to haunt your house. And imagine in this area with ongoing fighting and all these displaced people and death, you'd want to have a spirit house so that nobody was haunting you. It's also interesting in telling, so no running water, they're using these wells, but a lot of people couldn't even do a well, except that different groups and families visiting the temples of Angkor Wat are actually donating pumps to individual families. So this one is by the Stark family in 2011. This one, sorry, I cut the sign off, but again, different groups. Sometimes it's Japanese Rotary groups, sometimes it's American Rotary groups, sometimes it's just a tourist family or somebody got together and built them a well because they had no water. Not even that this is necessarily pure water, but it's got to be better than what you could pull from an open ditch or a canal, right? So look, we get bath time. So no bathrooms, you're just kind of bathing out in the open. Here's one that is a little bit more modest, so you get a little bit of screening, but still, not complete screening from the road. So kind kind of exposed. One of the things that really caught my eye, because in Thailand, even 30 years ago, 4 years of school was required, and nowadays it's through high school, was little kids, school-age kids, what are they doing running around, you know? And so I want to ask them, like, why are you not in school? So why aren't they in school? Parents can't afford to buy the school uniform or the book, and they want to use their kids as labor. And so I did run into lots of school-age kids. Here's a kid, he's selling some fruit in these bags. The fruit, you could eat it, but I think it's meant to feed the monkeys. You know, these are other kids at different temples with the little trinkets that they're selling. You know, kind of a rough life to not be in school. What do you do with your time? You know, are you able to make money? Maybe. This little girl, her mom was working her as a temple guide because she's so cute. And she would take you by your hand and like lead you to the temple and kind of, you know, I can't speak Khmer, but she would kind of point out stuff. And then she came to this Buddhist statue, and even at her age, she knew to light some incense and say some prayers. So she's giving a demonstration, and then when you went out of the temple, the mom would come and, you know, ask for money because you had a little guide. Interesting thing, probably if you go there, don't give money to these kids, even no matter how cute they are, because that would keep their parents dependent on their labor instead of having their parents send them to school. So what I did, this is actually before I realized this, I don't think I gave her mom money, but I think I brought this little girl and her brother some bottles of water and maybe something to eat. You know, so it was an exchange, it wasn't actually money. But you know, again, just kids everywhere, like running around everywhere, like why are they not in school? And so one could imagine as a tour guide taking people around to the temples, one would just see, you know, again and again, these little kids not in school, needed to be in school. And so here, finally, I come to the topic of my talk, the power of one, Phonthiri Lee and her grassroots educational efforts in Cambodia. So here's Phonthiri Lee. If you look on her website, she does actually have a website for her foundation. You won't find the whole backstory, but I know her because I've actually volunteered with their foundation. And why I brought up the Khmer Rouge is that she's the most amazing woman. She was there under the Khmer Rouge and was displaced with her family because her father was a teacher and spoke French. He was eventually killed, as were about 3 or 4 other immediate family members. She was saved. Her mom, you know, they were split up. There was a family of 6 and the kids were split up with the mom. She and one sister, amazingly, were sent to a village, and the village chief there recognized them because she had gone with her father. The father had been donating eye drops to people in the village who had been going blind. So because the father had saved some people in the village from blindness, that village chief, you know, at his own risk and danger, you know, protected Phonthiri and her sister, and so they didn't die, whereas some of their other siblings did. So it's just amazing. She was suffering under the Khmer Rouge in part because she, you know, she was of a school teacher's family, you know, not wealthy by any means, but, you know, doing pretty well, but also because she's not Buddhist, she's Muslim. There is an ancient Muslim minority group that lived there. And so she's a Muslim, and so both by being elite, but also by being Muslim, she was targeted. Seeing these kids, probably many of them descendants of people who fought in the Khmer Rouge as the Khmer Rouge, and yet she pities them and wants to do something to help them. Like, I don't know if I could do that in my life, to forgive that much. Like, it's just amazing. So there she is. So she's taking people on tours of temples, but she's really noticing all of the kids that aren't in school, and she's worried about it because her dad was a teacher, and so she's thinking about this. And so let's take a little look at this film, which I think I have queued up, perhaps. It's just a short film on her, and then I'll say a few more words. Hopefully we get sound, I don't know. Yes.
In the countryside in Cambodia, some children may come to school, but not very regular because the family needs to have them in the farm. The school is free, but they don't have any money. How can they have the money for uniform and supplies? My name is Winnie Lily. I have the children to go to school. The education is important for me because my father was a teacher. During the Khmer Rouge time, my father was killed. If we tried to study, we could be killed. My soul always go to school. At the beginning, I got only one girl. After that, 40 children, and now 2,000. After several years, I see the change because they know how to read and write, and they borrow the book from our library to read for their parents.
ព្រោះពេលរៀនទៅចេះដឹងនិងយល់ពីបញ្ហាផ្សេងៗហើយនឹងនាំឲ្យអនាគតរបស់យើងល្អ
I need them to have a good education to build their own family as well as to build their own country. My father, he has to be found here in the heaven and in my heart.
So she was nominated as a CNN hero in 2010. I don't think she actually won that year, but she was one of just a handful of people nominated. So let's get going. So what she did, that was saying that she used her tips, but she actually eventually was able to build a guest house. It's for housing the remaining family that she has where they live, but then they also have a guest house. So now the profits of the guest house go to fund, I believe it's now up to 2,500 school kids. And it's not just funding them, but I'm going to show you, it's such a basic level. She actually has to build the schools, and if she can build a couple buildings and keep it running for a couple of years, then only then can they convince the government to build a more permanent building. She has to build the housing for the teachers and give them, like extra salary because it's hard to recruit teachers to go to rural areas without electricity, and if there's no housing there, none of them will go, right? She has to feed the kids because they're starving to death. So it's like a huge social service program that she started, just one of her. So this is her Seven Candles guest house, where the funds that she raises from that go to support these kids. And I just found out about this. I was looking in Lonely Planet where to stay, and Siem Reap, I could stay here. Well, in fact, I could stay here and do volunteer teaching, so which fits since I had been an English teacher. So let's go to one of the schools. I think she's involved with 3 or 4, maybe more schools, but this is one of the schools. And this is actually the initial building that she had to build with her own funds in order to convince the government that they needed to build a school, right? So like, hello, how does that work? So this is actually the permanent building in our school that they finally did convince the government to build one with more rooms after they'd run the school in the wooden building for a few years. And then she's been doing other things on campus. I had mentioned this teacher housing. They recently finished a nice toilet building and wash facility at the toilets because, imagine how spreadable the diseases are without that. And I'll show you some of the other facilities that she had built. So the kids just look so happy. Of course, she's furnishing everything, the books, the uniforms, the lunch, etc. Right? So it's literally everything. And some donor has built this new playground, which looks kind of fun. They're just adorable kids. The way Cambodia, at least in the rural areas, is working it is they make kids go to school half a day. And so it's quite early until noon, and then the next group would come in at like 1 and go until quite late. But that way the parents get to benefit from their labor for half a day, and so that can help convince the parents to send them. It also is really smart because if they have limited building funds, then they can run one building twice, and so that is like really efficient. Here's some things. You notice anything about one of these girls?
No hair.
And why might she have no hair? Lice, yeah, it's lice, right? So you want to try to protect that by shaving. But let me just tell you a little bit about their bathing program. So it's always, seems too easy, like, okay, the kids are really dirty. Let's give them soap, and it's really easy to buy like a case of soap and hand out soap to everyone. Well, the little kids, bless their souls, wanted to please the teacher, and so they tried to bathe, but there was no water at their homes, and so they used water in a ditch which had all the runoff from the fields, including fertilizer and pesticides. So they washed, but then they got huge rashes from the water, and so they actually had to build a whole water catchment tank to catch the rainwater so that they can bathe them at school using the rainwater so that they don't get covered with rashes, at home. Like, oh my God. So they have like a weekly bathing program where the older kids help the little kids and so forth. And what a good idea. But just like the soap, you think that would be enough, but no. So it really has become a whole social development effort. Here's a little kid, and it looks like he's having fun. I'm not sure, this wheel. I mean, he's very poor. I'll show you their house. You realize, though, that something's wrong when you notice his kid brother, who's disabled, is in a wheelchair that's missing a wheel. So the wheelchair does not move because it's the wheel is off, and so the other little kid is playing with the wheel. So this little kid has cerebral palsy, and he just dreamed of going to school, and it took them a few years to convince the school to admit a child that was disabled. But then, just as they were being admitted, the wheel fell off of his wheelchair. So then, they had to take action to go to a foundation in the city that would actually make a wheelchair and try to speed it up so that he could actually go to school. So it's quite a thing to convince the parents, but also the school authorities that they could educate a disabled child. And so, look at him. He looks so happy. When you talked about school, he would just he would just be dancing around. He was so happy. There's his mom, so she's happy. A feeding program, again, it's quite poor, so they're, really thinking about trying to feed them at school. They had some funding or some support from the World Food Program, and you can see some of the rice and some of this is a can of mackerel and tomato sauce, but unfortunately it's not enough. So if you look at that, it's like an ordinary, like a tall can of food. That was supposed to support 16 kids. So unless they supplemented it, this would totally not be enough food. But then if they kind of had to hide their extra food, because if the World Food Program came and saw that they had extra food, then the World Food Program would withdraw their food. And so it was like this whole sneaky game. So this is the manager of the foundation, Lori, and she's just kind of like, I love that picture because she's just kind of thinking wistfully, but like, what do we do? Because, one can of mackerel just is not going to be enough. It's like the loaves and the fishes. So I actually, because I had taught junior, senior high English, I was considered to be an experienced teacher, even though I don't think I really am. So they sent me kind of just at dusk to teach the high school kids and the teachers. So that was my audience. We couldn't do it during the day because the high school kids were in school and the teachers were teaching. So at night, this is the one light in the initial wooden building. And so there it was. It was so dark in the room, sundown goes about 5 p.m. that I actually had to bring a flashlight to be able to read the book because I could not see the book. And so there's no electricity because it's in the country, so there's not a plan from the government to electrify it, so they're running it on a motorcycle battery or a car battery. So, they can only really run the one light, and so it is very dark. I'll show you some pictures of my students. I took these with a flash, but then, of course, they came out too dark, so what I did is, with my computer, I adjusted the lighting so we could actually see them. And so, here's some of the students that I was teaching, and one of the students, she really wanted to be a doctor, and she was trying to convince me that I should give her a scholarship, but I couldn't afford to give her a scholarship. But I wanted to say one thing, again, about the poverty of the area. One of the things I thought we would do the last day is to do a scavenger hunt, which is in English, but they have to go around and find things. Realizing that it would be dusk, it would be dark, I asked them, please bring a flashlight. Or if you don't have one, bring your family's flashlight. Nobody had a flashlight. No family had a flashlight. Nobody had a flashlight. So we couldn't do that because we couldn't see anything. So we did something else. But, a flashlight. come on, you know. And have you seen, somebody just gave me one of those ones where you wind it up or you can swing it so you don't actually need batteries, which would be expensive. So, also I should just note, I knew that I was going to go there as a volunteer, so as a teacher I had liked to use puppets, so I had my mom and my friend's dad, who was very uncreative, but he made his ugly one, which is a pirate puppet. I thought some of mine came out better, like the pig and the lion came out better. But anyway, the kids, I don't speak Khmer, but I speak Thai, and I had them in a bag, and I came and they yelled, "Tukara!" which means doll in Thai, and it's the same in Khmer. So they saw those and they knew they were, you know. So I think it's fun to practice a foreign language or practice English or whatever if you get to act it out with a puppet. So I hear from Lori, you know, years later that the puppets are still being used. So kind of this grassroots thing, like you didn't need to buy them, it wasn't really fancy, it was just made out of socks and like felt and like yarn, but they were lots of fun. They actually eventually had to start a kindergarten program, and they started it in particular for this boy. Happening all over Cambodia, but child abandonment. So his parents had too many kids and they couldn't support him. So at age 2, they left him at this gate of the school, and he got under that wooden school building, and he lived under the school building for a year. He wouldn't come out. So they'd have to leave food for him, and then he'd kind of scamper and get it, and then so he's like a little animal, right? Kind of like an animal. He was just so afraid. And finally, they convinced him after a year to come out. And so now look at him, he's got a friend. It's just amazing. But they actually started the kindergarten program at the school specifically for this kid to get him involved in activities. So, you know, again, it started out just, you know, 1 through 6, and now all of a sudden it's kindergarten, and then, you know, keep expanding from there. Some of the kids now actually have scholarships to go to college or have graduated from college. So amazing. I just was looking on their website, and in August of 2016, so it's just really recently, I mean, it's this month, they had to start a drought relief program because the area is in drought, periodic drought. And so the fragile families, again, they're just on the edge, needed a little bit of food support, or again, we might expect more child abandonment and so forth. And so they are able, through their donations and fundraising, to provide this amount of food for each of their fragile families living in that area around the school. Which, you know, so shocking poverty, and yet the Angkor temples are just in their backyard with all of that wealth and power from previous centuries. So it's just such a juxtaposition. So they look really happy to get some food, some eggs. I don't even, you know, fortified fish sauce, so that will help them get their vitamins so that they're not stunted. You know, what a good idea. So if you can graduate from grade school, they give you a really important bonus. It's like kind of an incentive. They give you used bicycle. They're importing used bicycles from Japan because they're better than new bicycles that were made in China. So they get the refurbished bicycles from Japan. And then that is, in their area, the main mode of transportation, and the kids would need it to get to the high school. So, you know, the bicycle is very useful. So you can see we're at the guest house with some of the refurbished bicycles that are getting ready to be donated to all the graduates. So what a super nice present. I think this is the same video that we just already watched. So here's a girl with her bicycle. She's really proud, and she's actually graduated from high school and is in college. So, you know, nice. So some of them are actually moving into college or moving into good positions so that they can also give support back. So I just thought that this was an amazing story. One person who decided that she had enough money to support her family, but then could also benefit these kids. And despite the personal history of being wounded and the family members being killed and separated and tortured, you know, she forgave them and is now supporting probably some of the descendants of the very people that may have killed her father, or, you know, separated their family or killed her brothers and sisters. So really just, I think, if I could be like that, that would be wonderful. So there she is. Oh yay, I got a t-shirt for teaching. They actually made us always wear those t-shirts so that they would know who we were. So I'm kind of toying with the idea. I think I have a sabbatical next year, and I had thought I would go to Thailand for part of it, but I may end up spending one semester volunteering with them. I'm writing to them, asking them this time if they could give me please a primary grade or a primary school, and I'll just stay with them. I don't want to go at night again, but stay with the primary kids, but stay for a long time so I could actually replace a teacher, or maybe they don't have enough teachers. So let's see if they say yes, but maybe. So maybe you guys can come and visit me in Cambodia, and I'll have you bring my supplies, which are not what you'd expect, but the thing that we could raise to help them. They said that they wanted microscopes, among other things, but I also always think about children's vitamins, because you can't get those in Cambodia, or if you can get them, you don't know what's in them, so you don't really trust them. But children's vitamins, because again, you look at how much taller I am than her. People stunted, the growth is stunted because of such poor nutrition. So I always think about those things. So if I decide to do this more definitively, I may tell my classes later this term. And then this is from one of the wells, but I liked the quote that they put up there: the greatest of all mistakes is to do nothing because you think you can only do a little. So you maybe can't do a lot, but maybe you could, volunteer for 2 weeks, to teach school. Or it's not just teaching English, but it can be things like teaching hand washing, teaching toothbrushing, teaching art, teaching, whatever you know about. Or, here's a family that had enough money to build a well. So really making a big difference to the family, because then they don't have to use that ditch water or canal water that's polluted. Do you have questions for me? I'm not an expert on Phonghiri Lee, but I'm glad to try to give some answers about the experiences I had there, or her foundation and some of the things that they're doing. Yeah.
When did she start?
She started, I think, in about 2005 or 2006, so it's not been all that long. It's been about 10 or 11 years. And I later sent a different professor who teaches at Missoula College there with her husband, and they were so interested in it that they came back and they convinced people here to donate food, and then other people were invited, to come to this cocktail party, but you're donating. And I think that they raised maybe $1,500 to send to them, and then I've brought my family there to donate some money to, I think for my sister and stuff, it was too shocking, and she was too hot. But I can stand the heat. I could teach there, but I'm not good enough. I can't live in one of those bamboo houses or grass houses. I have to actually live in something with cement and electricity, and then commute back and forth. I'm old. I've beyond the days of living in a grass hut, I think. Yeah. Was it inspiring to you? I don't know. I just, what could I lecture on that I don't already lecture on? I should talk about Phonghiri Lee.
I think it's rather I feel like that it's somebody making seeing their community and I want to do something about this, and so then they do something about it, and they find a really effective way.
It's probably more effective coming right from her,
Yeah.
right? Because she, has that history and the connections and stuff. So it's really not top down. It's true in lots of parts of Asia that they're always, been kind of trained to wait for the national government to do something. And so that kind of is disempowering. This one is empowering. And I think that the kids that have gone through the school at the expense of this foundation, will then pay back as teachers or volunteers or what have you. Or maybe they be themselves business owners that can then hire other people that have graduated and stuff.
So do the majority of the kids, do they go to university in Cambodia, or do they go international?
In Cambodia, even though we're teaching some English, I don't think it would be enough. And I took them out of this. I had some nice pictures. I had met with some of the Mansfield people. We had some people from Cambodia come as a part of a Mansfield gender empowerment group. So I met with some of them while I was there. And at one point we went, actually I wanted to take them to lunch, but they wouldn't let me take them to lunch. But we went to a food court But then, you know, even that was too expensive, so some, and these are the college kids, which, you know, you would imagine to be like, a couple of them had to bring bags of bread with them because that was cheaper, and they sat with us, but they just ate their bread. You know, that was like, oh, you know, like, please, why don't you let me pay for this? But, so I think it would be out of their reach unless they had a really good scholarship, but again, is their English quite good enough? Maybe not. So, you know, probably not those ones from local schools. Because although they have teachers, you know, being paid, they may not be the best English teachers or the best teachers, but then also, if they're depending on volunteers that are cycling in and out, then you're not really following a good curriculum, and so, like, who knows what English they're absorbing. But English would be smart, even if they wanted to stay locally because of the tourism, that they can communicate better with the tourists, and, you know, maybe eventually be a guide. And you wouldn't need perfect English for that. You could do it. Even, I think Ponhiri Lee herself, her English is okay. She actually probably speaks Russian, because I believe she might have gotten a college degree in Russia so again, Khmer Rouge, you know, like ties with communists, so, you know, she eventually could go to Russia, but now English. So next time, we have a physician from town named Nancy Fitch, who's worked a lot in international development fields, and she's going to talk about an issue that you raised, which is sustainability. So thinking about economic growth, but also about you know, environmental issues. So she's going to talk about sustainable health development. It's not enough just to you know, throw money at a situation for a year or 5 years. You really need to think in the long term and think, you know, of really basic things like just basic sanitation. One of my friends was a nurse in Thailand in the Peace Corps, and of all the things that she taught, you know, the thing that they said to her is, well, we learned something from you. You know what it was? You wash your hands between patients, right? So sometimes it's just a really basic thing, you know, that would make all the difference to the health of people, the quality of life of people, the health system. So thank you very much. I'm going to shut my microphone off so you can stop filming, and that's it for today. We're out a little teeny bit early.